Hello everybody, how's it going? It's me, Krendor, and welcome back to Learning Age of Sigmar. This is the second part of my Learning Age of Sigmar videos. If you missed the first video, I pretty much talk about how to read War Scrolls. So if you see this and you're like, what the shit does all this mean? You should probably go watch that video. But now, if you see this and you're like, oh, I know how to read this, now you're ready to move on to this video. So I'll put a link up here with like a little card or a thing or something you can click on, or it'll just be in the description as the top link down below. So, first things first, we know how to read these cards. Now, how do we play the game, right? That's the big question, okay? You know how to use your units and play with your units, but how do you actually set them up and play the game and all that good stuff? Well, let's get into it. So if we go to the Generals Handbook for 2021, it gives you a pretty clear thing on how to get started. We've got like, it's like first you need to agree on a limit of points for battle, then you pick a faction for your army, then you know, throw it all together and then determine your battle plan. Alright, so you could read that and be like, what's that even mean? So let's talk about it. First, there's point limits, alright? So when you are going to create an army, you have to pick what size army you want to play with. So you got 1 and 2,000 points. You can also play with whatever you want, honestly. This is just like, you know, the standards people use. I mean, if people go to tournaments and stuff, they're most likely going to be using 2,000. But for your first game, for like learning shit, just play with 500. Like legit, you can just play with 500 to 1,000 and be fine. And once you learn that, then you start being like, dude, I know what I'm doing. I want to add in more stuff. And that's typically how it goes. So when you play with 1,000, you have 1 to 3 leaders. When you get 2,000, you got 1 to 6. You essentially start doubling stuff. Well, not actually, because battle line you only get 2. You get 3 in 2,000 and various other stuff. We'll talk about that in a second. Recommended minimum battlefield size is 44 by 60. So that's my big ass game mat I have here. It's 44 by 60. It's actually smaller than the board used to be. I think it used to be 72? It used to be like 44 by 72 or like 48 by 72. It used to be bigger. They shrunk it down a bit to make the games a little shorter, and honestly, I like the smaller board size. I think it's good. And then you can throw in terrain and stuff. So anyway, points. Let's talk about points. So taking a look at our Seraphon book here, we're going to go ahead and just build a mini army, all right? So like I said, we need 1 to 3. Let's say we're doing 1,000 points, right? You and your friend are like, let's just play 1,000 points and learn the game, okay? So you need 1 to 3 leaders, 2 battle line units, 2 behemoths, 0 to 2 behemoths, 0 to 2 artillery, and 0 to 2 reinforced units, and you can have up to 200 allied units. So if you take a look, this is also outdated. So every time they release a new Generals Handbook, or you get a new Battletome for your faction, all of these get replaced, pretty much. So this is actually completely outdated. They don't even have, like, max units here. Just ignore the max. That's not even a thing anymore. Now it's reinforced units. So we're going to explain some stuff. So let's just go ahead and say, alright, you're building something, okay? Let's say you got Lord Croak, right? So Lord Croak, if we look here, he's got unit size 1, 320 points, he's a leader, and he's unique. What's that mean? Unique means you can only have 1 of him. You can't have 2 Lord Croaks, because he's a special character. There's no more than 1 Lord Croak. He's the only one that exists, so he's unique, and he's very special, and that's that. I think now he's up to like 400 and something points, because he got changed and other stuff. Doesn't matter, right? For this specific scenario, we're going to say, alright, I'm putting Lord Croak in, he's 320. Now it says, right, we need 2 units of battle line. What's that mean? So if we look through here, there's battle line in Seraphon army. So we got Saurus Guards, Saurus Knights, and Skinks. So these are like your front line, essentially, right? So, like, if you're playing Skaven, it's your clan rats that are in a big-ass pile, right? It's your front line. So you need at least 2 of these. So you can have... ignore these numbers, because you were just looking at minimum unit size now. We have 5 Saurus Guard, 5 Saurus Knights, or 10 Skinks. Now, you can have any combination you want. You can have 5 Saurus Guard and 10 Skinks. That's 2 battle line. You can have 5 Saurus Knights and 5 Saurus Guard. That's 2 battle line. You can have 10 skinks and 10 skinks. That's 2 battle line, right? You can do any combo you want. You can even reinforce these. So this is the new rule. So you can get 2 reinforcements. So let's say you have skinks. You can have a unit of 20 skinks. You can have a unit of 30 skinks. All right, and that's only going to count as 1 battle line, however. So let's say you have 30 skinks and 5 Saurus Knights. That's 2 battle line, right? So reinforcing a unit is just doubling it and then, well, adding on to what it already is. So if you have 10, then you have 20, then you have 30. You can only reinforce a unit twice if they're a battle line unit. So if you wanted to go up to, I don't know, let's say you have a unit of Kroxigors, all right? You got Kroxigors, and you want to bring a unit of 9 Kroxigors. You can't do that because it's not a battle line unit. So you can only have a unit of 6 Kroxigors maximum. And if you do that, that's 1 of your reinforcements spent of your 2 that you get with a 1,000 point match. But if you have like a 2,000 point match, you could bring 6 Kroxigors. That's 1. You could bring 30 skinks. That's 2 more. And then you could bring like 10 Saurus Knights. So you would use all your reinforcements doing that. But for the sake of just this, let's say I wanted to bring 20 skinks. That'd be 120 points. And then I wanted to bring 10 Saurus Knights. That'd be 200 points. So the point values also increase based on the amount you're adding to the unit. Does that make sense? It's a little... It's one of those things where it sounds more complicated than it actually is again. Once you get into the hang of it, you're like, oh, I get what's going on. But so for this, we don't even have to get into reinforcements right now. We'll just say, you know what? I'm going to bring 10 skinks and 5 Saurus Knights. All right, that's what, 160 points. All right, so you got 160 and you got 320, so we're up to 480 points right now. Now, let's say you want to bring some big dinosaurs, all right? You can add in up to 2 behemoths in a 1,000 point army. So you can go Stegodon with Skink Chief, Skink Oracle on Troglodyte. You can go Scarvet on Carnosaur. You can go Old Blood on Carnosaur. Those are all behemoths. Those are leaders on behemoths, actually. So those are going to count as a leader and a behemoth slot. So since we already have a Lord Croak, that's 1 leader. So you can only bring 2 more of these. Because they're all going to also count as leader and behemoths. So behemoths we've got are Bastiladon and Stegodon. So let's say you've got, I don't know, 1 of each. So you've got 460 points of big dinosaurs, and you put those into your army. So that means you're at, what, 460 plus, what were we at? 480. So, I mean, you're practically at 1,000 already, right? So you got a Bastiladon, a Stegodon, a Lord Croak, and then the Skinks, the Saurus Knights, and then you can just look through and be like, oh, what else do I want to throw in? You can throw in, like, something cheap. I don't know, a Skink Priest is like 70. I think he would fit, right? I mean, you get to a point where, like, maybe you get 1,020 points, and then you tell your friend, like, hey, do you care if I go to 1,020, and then you can go to 1,022, and they might be like, yeah, sure, right? Like, you can just figure it out. Tournaments, probably not going to do that, right? You have to stay within the limits, but if you're just having fun, like, whatever. It's a way to balance. It's a way to keep everything even. So that's kind of building an army in a nutshell. There's obviously a lot more to it. There's like people taking different things, like I need this to buff this, so I'm going to take this with this, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff. There's battalions, but in terms of just building an army with points, this is essentially, the most basic version of it. All right, next up, let's talk about battle plans, right? What are you going to be doing in this game? So the first battle plan of this book is marking territories. So essentially what this is there's armies. So each player picks an army, and then they roll off. Winner chooses which is the attacker defender. All right, so I'm just going to use this again as an example. So we've got that lizardman guy. We got the orc guy, all right? So they're both going to roll off. And the orc gets a 5, lizard gets a 2, so he's like, I'm going to be the attacker, alright? So for this battle, he's the attacker, he's the defender. It doesn't really matter for the actual battle, it's just for the setup. So, the orc is the attacker, right? So we look here, defender sets up the battlefield. First they set up objectives as shown on the map, then they set up recommended number of terrain features. I mean, that doesn't matter, you can literally just do whatever, right? You got a tree, you got some trees. let's say this is the objective. It's supposed to go there. I mean, it shows you right here how to set it up. So you've got like attacker, defender, territory. First fourth of the map is that. First fourth map is that, and then nobody else can set up here. So it's essentially like, 11 inches, right? Because it's 44 by 60, I believe, or whatever I said earlier, right? So it's like 11 inches from the end is where you can set up all your units. 11 inches from the other end is where he can set up units, and then you've got the 4 points right here, which are the objectives. So you just measure those out and place all 4 objectives, because that's what it tells you to do. There's various types of gameplays and objectives and battle plans and everything. You can make up your own, like I did in my battle report, where I used a Yoda in the middle. But, if you're going to play a tournament, they're going to use these. So it depends on what you're doing. I mean, you can make up your own if you want, if you're just having fun. So anyway, the attacker picks which territory is their territory, the other territory is defender's territory. So essentially, after you set up the scenery, they might be like, I like the way the tree is right here. So they might want to have that side. That's what it's for. And then the players then use alternating deployments, starting with the attacker. Each player must set up their units wholly within their territory. So what this means is all these units don't start on the board. They start off the board. So, right, maybe you have a unit of 5 Saurus Guard, right? So let's say that's these, and you have a slam. So since these are the defenders, and these are the attackers, they get to set up first. So, I guess, well, they can also say, I want you to set up first. But typically, you want to set up first, because whoever sets their units down first gets to go first. So if you're the attacker, you're going to be setting up first, because you want to get to choose who goes first. So let's say they're like, all right, I put my boars down, all right? They've put their boars down, then you're like, all right, I put my Saurus Guard down. All right, so these Saurus Guard all go down right here. Doo-doo-doo. All right, they're all down. And then he's like, all right, I'm going to put down my Savage Big Boss. And then you're like, all right, I'm going to put my Slan, and I'm going to put them right here. All right, so you've set it all up, and that's all the units you had. So now he finished setting up first, so they'll get to go... they get to choose who goes first. So they might be like, you know what? Maybe they have a lot of shooting. All right, maybe they have a big shooting army, and they can't actually reach you yet. So they're like, you know what? I'm going to let you go first, because you're probably going to end up moving towards the objective, and then when it's their turn, they're going to blast the shit out of you with their shooting. Or maybe they're a very melee aggressive army. So maybe they're just like, you know what? We're going to move up, take this objective, and then... just after they take it, they're going to keep moving forward. So they're just aggressive, right? It all depends on what you're trying to do. So there's different strategies and all that. But so if you look at this, it also says battle lasts 5 rounds. Starting from the 3rd battle round, one player immediately wins a major victory if they control all the objectives on the battlefield. So there's just different win conditions. But like I said, you can literally be like, whoever captures this and holds it for 2 rounds is the winner. Like, you can do whatever you want. So that's pretty much how the start of the games go. But for the most part, that's the most standard way of doing it. Is you both roll off. One person's the attacker, and then the other person sets up the board, and then you take turns setting up your units, and whoever finishes setting up first gets to decide who goes first. So if they go first, they're going to get 1 command point, but they get to go first. So command points are a thing that we'll get into in a bit. And then they would get 2 command points for going second in the new edition. And the command points, bonus command points for going second are a new thing. But again, we'll talk about that in a bit. This is just kind of how to get started with setting everything up. So we're going to ignore talking about command points first, because I think we should talk about phases first. I think it's easier to learn that. So there's 6 different phases of a turn, and each player gets to have those 6 phases in one turn. So like we said, the Orc player finished setting up first, and they were like, you know what? I'm gonna take the first turn, right? They're like, you know what? I think I can get this objective and hold it. I don't think the Slan's going to want to get close to me. So they're going to do that. They're just going to straight up run at it with boars and try to take the objective. So how do you even hold an objective? That's a point we'll get to pretty soon. So first things first, the hero phase is the first phase. Then there's the movement, the shooting, the charging, the combat, and the bravery. Those are the 6 phases of a turn. So let's start with the hero phase. That is where the heroes do their heroic things, essentially. So that's where you will spend your command points when you have them. That's when you will cast spells with your magical heroes. That's when you will use your priests to cast prayers. That's when you'll use your special leader characters to give abilities to other units or themselves. For the most part, you can do it. Some characters can do it in other phases, but that's what makes this the hero phase, right? This is kind of when all the heroic actions and magic are happening. So the big boss, he doesn't have any spells he can cast. He's got some command ability stuff, but for now we're just going to ignore that. We'll do it later. And, you know, he's got nothing to do. So really there's like nothing for them all to do in the hero phase. So they're just going to be like, hey, you know what? That's my hero phase. We're just sitting here. So then we move on to the movement phase. So movement, much like we looked at on the scroll, you can see they can move 12, he can move 5, so they're going to go ahead and just move. So here's the objective, sitting right here. In order to capture an objective, you have to be within 6 inches. Let me just angle this down a bit. Here we go. So I'm not sure if you measured from the middle or from some part of the objective. I think it is the middle, but it might just be at the edge. I mean, you know, if you're doing it your own way, you can do whatever, but for learning purposes, we'll just say it's the middle, all right? So we'll say middle, so if they get right here, they capture it. So they're going to move 12. They don't really have to move the full 12, so they're just going to move up to here, and the rest will follow. Now, let's say I want this guy to kind of catch up to him, right? But he can only move 5 inches, all right? So if he moves, he's only going to move up to this little plant thing in the ground, and that's as far as he can go. But you can actually run as a bonus type of action to get some extra movement. So let's say he's like, you know what, I'm going to run. 6, so he rolls a 6, so he can move another 6 inches because he's exerting his immense strength and stamina. So if you measure it out here, I mean, he can move pretty much all the way up to here now. So he's going to do that. I know I mentioned in the first video you can only move within 3 inches of a unit. That's only for enemy units. You can move within 3 inches of your own units. I also bumped him up a bit. Whoops. Now, if you run, you might be like, wow, you just run every turn. So there are some downsides. If you run, you cannot shoot with the unit that ran, and you cannot charge with the unit that ran. So that's going to be pretty big. We'll get to that eventually. So that's the movement phase. We move on to the shooting phase. We have no missile weapons with either of these. So there's no shooting, so that's the shooting phase. Then we move on to the charge phase. We've arrived. So let's say these boars wanted to try and charge the Temple Guard. All right, they're like, you know what? Screw it. We're going to charge those Temple Guard and show them who's boss. They're going to attack them. So they would have to go about 10 inches to do that. The one over here would actually have to go about 12.5 inches. But as long as one of these boars can make it in, that's all that really matters. Because after you've charged in, you can also move a bonus 3 inches when the combat hits. That's called pile in. So it's kind of your units being like, pile in, boys, we're going to fight, essentially. It's a way to get more units into the combat. So we're going to go ahead and say, you know what? They're going to charge right here. They need to roll 2 dice, and whatever they roll is their charge. That is the amount of inches they can charge. So I rolled a 4. That means we cannot charge. Now, there are ways to reroll charge rolls, such as hero abilities that they might have, like you can reroll your charge rolls. Sometimes you have a guy with like special abilities like a drum that allow you to reroll the charge rolls. I don't believe this guy's does. Like if we take a look here, we have add 2 to charge rolls. So technically, this 4 would be a 6 because of that drummer banging on his drum in here, which is still not enough to reach them, so it doesn't matter. But that's all I'm saying is there's things that'll help out your charges. For example, there is a thing where you can re-roll the charge, and let's say we got to re-roll it, and we rolled a 4. But let's say I rolled again, and I rolled a 7, and then I got an 8, 9. We would be very close, but we'd still not be able to charge. But let's say I rolled terribly over and over, and then I rolled an 11, and then it was a 12, 13, and then I could easily get like all of these in. So that wouldn't even be a problem. But that's not going to happen. I'm just doing that for an example. So anytime you charge with any unit, you're going to roll 2 dice, and that's the amount of inches you can charge. So they were not able to charge, but they were able to capture the point. So right now, they control the point, but they're not going to get any points quite yet, I believe. I think it depends on the game mode you're in. Sometimes you score points at the end of your turn. Sometimes you score points at the end of, whoever controls this at the end of both players' turns scores the point. So for now, we'll just say, hey, these guys took this, they get a point. All right? So the orcs get a point for holding the objective. Now, the last part is the Battle Shock phase, which is where the bravery kicks in. So if you missed in the last video, we talked about bravery and, losing your units and them fleeing away. So, you only really do that phase. Well, it happens, but it only really matters if you've lost any units. And clearly we haven't lost any units, so we're fine. And that would be our turns. That's just one turn in Age of Sigmar. Easy, right? So now, let's kick it over to the Seraphon side. So, at the start of every turn, you're going to gain command points. So, I'm going to use this Dyson as an example, alright? So, let's talk about how command points happen. First turn of the game, the player who goes first just generates normal command points. The player that goes second, so this would be the Seraphon, they get a bonus command point for going second. I believe it's only the first turn of the game this happens. But I may be wrong. I think if it happens the second turn, it's whoever goes second again. I'm not actually sure. This is where I'm like losing. I'm like, wait, is this what happened? It's either the first turn of the game only that this happens, or it's every time the player goes second, they get a command point for going second. It might actually be every turn. So for the sake of this, I'm just going to say whichever player goes second every turn gets a bonus command point. So you get 1 command point for it being your turn. That's just a constant, right? If it's your turn, you get 1 command point. So now they're going second, so they get 2 command points. And then there's other ways to earn command points as well. So if we look at the Slan's abilities, they have Foresight at the start of your hero phase. That's where we are right now. Roll 2 dice for this model. For each 4-up, you receive a command point. So we'll take our dice, we roll, and we got a 5 and a 3. So we get 1 more command point. Then, at the start of every hero phase in Age of Sigmar 3.0, you can perform a heroic action. So this is where we're going to get a little crazy. All right, we're going to start looking at, we're going to start looking at some stuff right here. All right, heroic actions. So, a unit with the hero keyword on its war scroll. So to look at keywords, all you do is go to your war scroll, you look down at the keywords, and let's see, does he have hero? He does. So the Slan is a hero. A unit with a hero keyword on its war scroll. Let me block this glare out, if I can. At the start of the hero phase, can carry out 1 heroic action from the table with 1 friendly hero. The effect of the heroic action is treated the same way as the effect of an ability for rules purpose. So, one of your heroes can do one of these things, alright? Every time it's your turn. So you can pick a friendly general, or a friendly hero, roll a dice, add 2 to the roll if your general's been slain, and on a 4-up you receive a command point that can only be spent during that turn to allow the hero to issue a command. So if I want my Slan to have an extra command point to spend, I can roll, and I get a 4, so now he actually has... we're up to 4 command points, technically, because he's also got a command point. I'm trying to find a dice I can put. So here we go, I can put a little dice marker here, like, hey, look, he also has a bonus command point. There you go. So I've got 3 in total, and he's got 1. An additional 1. He can also use these 3. Or, if I was like, you know what, I don't want to do that. Get out of here, command point. He can pick a friendly hero that is not a wizard. If the enemy hero if it's an enemy hero, that hero can attempt to unbind 1 spell. This is pretty much like if you got a guy that's not a wizard, you can make him a wizard, and he can cast a spell or dispel something, right? So if you want to make your... If I wanted to turn this guy into a wizard, I could do that if I give him this heroic action at the start of the turn. I can also do Finest Hour. Pick a friendly hero, add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made by that hero until the end of the turn. Add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target that hero until the end of the turn. You cannot carry out this heroic action with the same hero more than once per battle. So this is like a very strategic thing, because obviously you're not going to be like, it's his Finest Hour. He gets +1 to wound and save, when it's like turn 1 and he's not going to get attacked or do any attacking. But let's say these guys are starting to get a little close, and maybe they're about to kill him, and you're like, hey, you know what? It's his Finest Hour. He needs +1 to save to stay alive, and then maybe if he has to do some attacking, he's got a better chance of wounding them, right? So that's a very strategic thing, because you can only do it on 1 hero per battle. So you can give him his Finest Hour, and then maybe you have, I don't know, a Saurus Old Blood, and you can give him Finest Hour, and then the next turn you can give your Stegodon... or like Engine of the Gods Finest Hour. As long as it's a hero, you can give it Finest Hour. And then finally, Heroic Recovery. Pick a friendly hero, make a Heroic Recovery roll by rolling 2d6. If the roll is less than that hero's bravery, you can heal up to d3 wounds. If the roll is equal to the hero's bravery, you can heal 1 wound allocated to that hero. So let's say this Slan, how many? He's got 7 wounds, alright? So let's say he's taken 2 damage, so he's at 5. Now, let's say we're going to be like, alright, I'm going to Heroic Recovery. So he has 9 bravery. So we'll roll these dice, and it's a 9, which means he heals 1 because it's equal to his bravery. So he would be healed up to 6 wounds. Now, let's say he rolled a 10. That would be greater than his bravery, so he would heal D3. And to heal D3, you literally just roll a dice, and 1, 2 is 1, 2, 3, or restart. 1 and 2 is 1, 3 and 4 is 2, 5 and 6 is 3. That's what a D3 is. So I rolled a 4, so that's equal to a 2. So he would be back up to full health with that. So that's how that works. And those are the 4 actions for heroes you can do at the start of every hero phase. And they can do it as well. So no matter whose turn it is, they get to do a heroic action. So it's a way they've implemented to make it so if it's not your turn, you can still have a little say over what's happening in your army. A little more say. And I think it's pretty neat, so that's one thing they've added in. But I mainly wanted to cover that because it also talks about command points a bit. And I've gotten a little off the track from the command point train. But let's just go ahead and say we've got 3 command points here, alright? So, how do you spend command points? So you can spend command points a few ways. You can have, what do you call them? Kind of like your banner guys or your drummers or special units within a unit can cast it on that unit. So if I had this drummer guy or I had, let's see, here I got like this totem bearer, right? He's got a big ass totem. He can cast command abilities on this unit. He's kind of like a leader. Or every unit also can have a dedicated alpha character. Most people are just like, oh no, he's the alpha, right? The guy in the middle. And he can also cast it on the unit. So that's one way to cast command abilities. The other way, because they can only cast it on their unit, right? If you wanted to cast a command ability with these guys onto him, you could not do that. But he can cast command abilities on himself and others. So, I actually brought it up here because it's probably easier. Command points, using command abilities. So, unit champions can issue commands to their own unit. That's what I just talked about, like totem bearers and drummers and stuff like that. Heroes can issue commands to units that are wholly within 12 inches of themselves. They can also issue commands to themselves. That also ties in. Generals can issue commands to units that are wholly within 18, and totems can issue commands to units that are wholly within 18. So generals are a thing I did not mention when building an army, but when you build your army, you have to select one of your heroes to be a general. And they get a few bonuses as well that I'll mention in a little bit, but they would be able to cast command abilities in a greater range. So that's pretty nice as well. So yeah, that's who can spend the command abilities. But now let's actually get to the point where we're going to use command abilities. All right, so I'm going to use a command ability in every phase of the Seraphon turn. All right, buckle up. So we're in the hero phase, so let's go straight to the Slan, because he's the one that's going to be doing everything. So this is when I can cast spells. So I can cast up to 3 spells in my hero phase. One of them is Comet's Call. So a casting value of 7. So I take my 2 dice as I hit the camera, and I roll them, and I got a 5. Now, I get +1. So technically that's a 6, and there's actually some other stuff I can do with Seraphon to make it a 7. For the sake of this, I'm just going to roll again and again, and I got a 6, now it's a 7 technically, alright? So what happens is now D3 enemy units anywhere on the battlefield suffer D3 mortal wounds. You can pick D6 if the casting roll is up at 10. So D3, 1. So we'll say 1 unit takes 2 mortal wounds, because it's a D3. So we'll say the big boss takes 2 mortal wounds, so he's down to 4, alright? So, you can count up or down. I'm just going to say he's taken 2 wounds, alright? So, that happened. There's other spells I can cast, but that's just what I'm going to do for now. So let's say command abilities. There's a combination of things you can do here. There's the heroes that generally have their own command abilities. And then there's the generic command abilities that are available to everybody, no matter what army you are. So, for the Slan, he has a command ability. You can use this in your hero phase, so it'll usually tell you what phase you can use it in. If you do so, pick a friendly Seraphon unit wholly within 18, and until your next hero phase, that unit can fly, and you can add 1 to save rolls for attacks made with missile weapons that target that unit. You can only use this command ability once per hero phase. So, let's go ahead and we're going to use a command ability. Bloop. And now these Saurus Guard can fly, and if they were getting hit with missile weapons, which they're not going to because there's no missile weapons right here, they would be a little sturdier against them. He could also use it on himself, but for now he's just going to use it on the Saurus Guard, alright? Now another thing you could do in the hero phase is rally, but I'm going to demonstrate that after a little bit. Well, you know what, I can just do it now. So rally is a way to bring units back. So let's say one of these Saurus, let's say 2 of these Saurus Guard are dead, alright? So if it's our turn, we can say, you know what, I'm going to use a command point to rally. So you take dice equal to the amount of units slain in that unit. So 2 are dead, so I take 2 dice. We roll them. And every 6 means you can return units to that unit. So I can return 0. So I essentially just wasted a command point. But let's say I roll again. Let's say I roll again. Let's say I roll again. Pleased. Okay, now we've rolled 1 6, which means I can return 1 Temple Guard to that unit. So that's how rally works. You can only do that at the start of the hero phase. If I rolled 2 6, I could do all of them are back, and you can only do it up to the amount that they started with. So like, you can't be like, oh, I'm gonna do rally and roll and get like a 6 and add another one in when you only started with 5. It's kind of like bringing them back from running away or from being dead in a way. So that's what rally is. Into the movement phase now, we have at the double, which is you can use a command ability after you declare that a friendly unit will run. So like we mentioned earlier, when you're going to run, you roll a dice, and that's how many units, or how many inches you can move. But if you use a command point for at the double, so let's say we do that, that means the Source Guard automatically runs 6. So you don't even have to roll the dice. It's just straight up, you get a 6. So they can run 6 plus 5. So they get 11 inches of movement. So they can just straight up run up to here. We'll just do that real quick here. All right, here we go. So they can move 11. So they can get there as long as they're 3 inches away from the boars, which they would be. And woo, all right, they've taken the point. So here we are. Source Guard have taken the point. Well, they're contesting it, right? And so now the Slan is sitting back. He doesn't want to fight, all right? So right now, even though they're contesting the point, the orcs still control this point because they got here first and they have more models on the point. So even if the Slan came up here to help and try and take the point, it would not matter because they still have more models on the point than the Seraphon. So getting here first was actually a big win for the orcs because now they can just sit here and hope to hold the point and not lose the point. However, there are different point values for holding a point, which I'll get to after we discuss command abilities. I can't get off the track here. So let's go ahead and see some other things. So another thing is enemy movement phase. So the orcs could do some stuff here. You can use this command ability in enemy movement phase after an enemy unit finishes a normal move, run, or retreat. Unit that receives a command must be within 9 inches of the enemy unit and more than 3 inches from all enemy units. You can make a d6 move with the unit that receives the command, but it must finish the move more than 3 inches from all enemy units. So this is a way of being like, let's say these boars are here, right? And you're afraid they're going to die because you're probably not going to be afraid of Source Guard. But let's say these are like storm vermin or some crazy shit, right? And you're like, uh-oh. So you can, if they're getting close, that means, hey, they're probably going to try to charge me, right? Because, you know, maybe they're only like 3-4 inches away. Well, you can be like, I'm going to redeploy. And you get 2, so you could retreat. Well, you can redeploy a bit, and so you can move 2 inches back to make it harder for them to charge you. So it's just a way to kind of make it more difficult to have those units get attacked. So maybe you have skinks or something you don't want to get hit. Maybe you have like chameleon skinks, for example. Now, you won't be able to shoot with them because it says you cannot shoot later there, but, you know, maybe they would have died if you didn't do that, right? So, I mean, there's plenty of things. Or maybe another good example is, say, these orcs were right here, and the point was right here, and you try to charge them, they could redeploy and kind of go back onto the point and actually capture it. So it can work in favor of the person you're trying to charge. So maybe, I guess you get what I'm saying? Alright, so next up we've got charge phase. So you can use this command ability. After you make a charge roll for a friendly unit, they must receive the command. That unit must receive the command. You can reroll a charge roll. So essentially, if I was going to charge with these Source Guard into these boars and they had to roll, let's see, what would they have to roll? They would have to roll a 4, pretty much. If I rolled a 2 and a 1, I'd be like, ah, geez, and then I'd use my final command point to re-roll that and hopefully reach them and be good to go, okay? But if you're getting charged and you're a shooting unit, you can unleash hell. So let's say these chameleon skinks were actually on the board, all right? And they were getting charged by the boars. They could choose to use a command point to unleash hell. And that would mean, with this can only be used by a shooting unit, and they would be allowed to shoot, and they would get -1 to hit, So they'd be 2 attacks, 4x4, 1 damage. So instead of 3x4, you're 4x4, but you get to try and damage the unit that's charging you. So it's kind of like a final defense type of thing, like, geez, we're getting charged, we're probably going to die here. Like, just fire at will, and hopefully we hit them. And it's going to be a little harder to hit them, because they're literally charging at you, but it's better than nothing, right? So maybe you lessen the blow. So that's what Unleash Hell is. Then we've also got All-Out Attack. Whoops. In the combat phase, that gives you +1 to hit for attacks made by that unit. And then you can also do it in the shooting phase. So if you're using Chameleon Skinks, you can be like, hey, I'm going to all-out attack in the shooting phase, and then your 2 attacks hitting on 2s, wounding on 4s. Or if you do it in the melee phase, or the combat phase, you would be 2 attacks, 2x3 -1 with the Saurus Guard. So this is why it's important to have a lot of command points, by the way, because command points give you a whole bunch of stuff, right? Like you can do so many different things with command points that can kind of just tilt the teeter-totter a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Kind of give you a little favor in the battle, swap the morale. Now another thing you can do is all-out defense. So if you are getting attacked, you can add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target that unit until the end of the phase. So let's say the Chameleon Skinks are shooting at your boars, and the boars have a 6+ save. That's pretty shitty. You can be like, you know what? We're going to all-out defense right here. And maybe maybe that gives you a little bit of an edge to keep something alive. Or you have to remember, this only lasts 1 phase. So if you do it in the shooting phase, once you get charged by the Saurus Guard, you're going to lose that +1 to save. So maybe you're like, you know what? I trust the Chameleon Skinks to miss more than I trust the Saurus Guard to miss, because obviously they might be hitting on 2s and wounding on 3s, while the Chameleon Skinks are like 3s and 4s, or maybe 2s and 4s. So maybe you save your +1 to save to the combat phase, and then have a little better luck against that, because you're probably going to get hit by more dice. Let's talk a bit about the combat phase, because there are some things that happen in the combat phase that don't happen in really any other phases. So one of them is the pile-in. So I'm going to demonstrate something, all right? So right here we've got the Temple Guard, and we've got the Savage Big Boss. Now, let's say the Big Boss, he already moved up 5 inches, all right? And we're going to say for demonstrative purposes, the point is back here, or the objective is back there. So currently, the Seraphon control the objective. They have a guy on the point. Maybe they already captured it. Now they're moving up a bit to help screen for the slaying or something. I don't know, right? Just demonstrate. So right now they have 1 guy on the point. Now, let's say it is the Orc turn. All right, and they're going to roll a charge. So first we're in the charge phase. And I'm going to re-roll it till I get something I want. All right, a 9. Perfect. So he is 8 inches away currently. Let me show you. All right, so he is currently about 7 inches away, actually. So that means he can charge in 7. So he's charging in right there. Now, because he rolled so high on the charge, he can actually move an extra 2 inches to get closer to the point. But let's say for demonstrative purposes, he actually rolled just the 7. All right, so 7 on the charge, that's as far as he can go. Now, during his combat phase, the Orc Combat Phase, when it's his turn to fight, he can make a pile-in move. So, if we look here, piling in allows you to move 3 inches when you're about to fight. So, if he wanted, he can legit just move like right over here. And now, he is in full control of this point, and the Saurus Guard are not. So just by charging and piling in, he has now taken an objective where it seemed like he was not going to be able to take that objective. There's different types of things where it's like, rules like, you can pile in an extra 3 inches with some units. Some units make it so your pile in, it gets halved, or so you don't pile in. Another thing you can do is, in combat, if you're within an inch of a character, that character or model has to fight you. So say we were back here again, right? And say the Slan is right here, all right? So let's say we rolled a 9, okay? So we were able to go all the way up here. Now, when we do the pile-in, he's going to be able to get near the Slan. All right, so now when he piles in to attack, he can actually get into combat with the Slan and start doing some crazy stuff. Now, I know they did just change piling in the 3rd edition. I don't remember what they changed. I'm pretty sure when you charge and you do the pile-in now, well, I know every unit in combat still has to fight, but I'm not sure if he'd be able to fight the Slan after piling in, since he is, next to him. I think you still have to remain closer to the source guard than you are the Slan. I think that's one of the rules. So the unit that you're against has to be the one. I don't know, there's something like that. Either way, I just wanted to tell you about piling in. I'm like the worst person to explain piling in, because I'm still someone that's confused on like the little intricacies of it. Someone in the comments can explain it. Please do. But all you need to really know for like basics is after you, or when you're about to fight, you are allowed to move 3 inches with that unit that's about to fight. If we look at the actual rules, it says, pile-in. You can move a model making a pile-in move up to 3 inches. When you make a pile-in move with a model, it must finish the move no further from the nearest enemy unit than it was at the start of the move. So I guess that's the new rule. In the combat phase, you must pick a unit to fight if you have any eligible to do so, and the models in the unit must attack with all weapons they are allowed to use that are within range of an enemy unit. So, if you're in combat, you have to fight. So piling in against the Slan makes it so he is now in combat. So that means that the Slan has to fight. So, I mean, if you get a double turn or something, you can start hitting the Slan, so you can set yourself up to make some plays. Another thing that I want to explain with combat is, I forgot what I was going to say. I read it over here. Oh yeah, weapons. So if you want, say we're on our next turn, right? And say it's the Seraphon turn, and maybe for whatever reason the boars are here, okay? So we've got this crazy battle going on over here. Everybody's in combat. If you want, with the Savage Big Boss, when you attack, you can be like, you know what? I'm going to put my... with the Source Guard, sorry. I'm going to put my pole arms into the Savage Big Boss, and I'm going to put my powerful jaws into the boars. So you can dedicate different melee weapons into different units if you want. So say the Savage Big Boss, maybe he only has 1 hit point left. So you're like, well, I don't want to waste all my attacks on him. So before you actually attack, you have to declare that. You can't be like, let's see how it goes when I do that. Like, you have to actually be like, all right, before I attack, I'm going to put pole arms into him and jaws into them. So if you miss with your pole arms, you can't be like, uh-oh, I didn't kill him. Hey, the jaws are going into him too. You have to declare before you actually attack. So it's a bit of like a risk-reward type thing. But that is allowed in combat. So that's just some, little combat phase fun stuff. Aside from that, the actual combat phase is just going back and forth. So whoever's turn it is gets to go first. So if this was a situation right now, let's say it was the Seraphon turn, the Seraphon would get to go first unless some weird ability made it otherwise. There actually is with the Big Boss a thing. So if we look... after this model has fought in the combat phase for the first time, you can pick 1 friendly Bone Splitter unit that has not yet fought in combat phase, that is within 3 inches of an enemy unit, and that is wholly within 12 of this model, and that can fight immediately before they get to fight. So there's abilities like that allow other units to fight before your opponent, but for the sake of learning, I say this a lot, it would be Temple Guard go, and then they get to pick a unit that goes, and then you would go, and then it's just back and forth, and whoever's turn it is gets to pick first. So let's say I'm going to go with my Temple Guard, all right? That would mean I can start piling in. So let's say it's my turn. I can be like, all right, Source Guard, they're going to start going over here now. So they're going to start all shifting 3 inches up here. And as long as they're just staying next to each other, that's a big one, we can start trying to recap that point if we don't have enough guys on it. So that's kind of why we're moving there. But we also don't want to get out of range of the Slan and have him just die, because they can also soak up damage. Now, speaking of soaking up damage, there's a lot of things all at once, but I'm trying to, make it as simple as I can. Let's say that the Saurus Guard just attacked and nothing happened. All right, so now I can go with the Orcs. And I'm going to be like, okay, which do I want to attack with first? So if I think the big boss is going to die, I'm probably going to go with him first. But if I think the boars are going to die, then I'm going to go with them first. Now, the Saurus Guard have already fought. This is another thing, all right? Saurus Guard have already fought, so the only unit left to fight is the Slang. So why would I fight with these boars when they're not even going to get hit, while he is probably going to get hit? So obviously I would want to fight with the big boss first, because these guys they're in no danger. They're not really going to get attacked. I mean, the Slan could slide over and attack, but even then he's not that strong. So I'm probably going to go big boss, and he's going to fight. All right, so that's how that works. So I just wanted to kind of explain the back and forth turn order of everything, because that is also pretty important to discuss. Oh, I almost forgot one more. So one more thing is, let's say the big boss attacks here and he attacks the Saurus Guard, all right? When the Saurus Guard die, let's say I did 5 damage, all right? Or 4 damage. So 2 Saurus Guard are going to die. You can pick which Saurus Guard are the ones that die. You select which units are dead. So maybe you don't care as much about the point, and you're like, you know what, these 2 guys will die, whatever. Or maybe the Slan, you're like, you know what, he's going to be fine. I'm going to take these guys out because I need that objective, right? So you're going to keep more guard on the objective, maybe sacrificing the Slan's survivability a bit. Or maybe you take the end pieces. Like, you know what, this guy's going to go away, and this guy's going to go away. What you don't want to do is disrupt the unit coherency, because if you're like, you know what, these 2 are going to go away, right? The middle ones, for whatever reason, you've now broken your unit coherency, because they all have to be within, it's like an inch of each other or something. So you would have to sacrifice either these 2 guys or this guy to keep the unit coherency. So he would probably get sacrificed, and now you have these 2. So you would lose 3 for doing, just mind-boggling dumb plays. So, I mean, if you're playing a friendly person, they would probably be like, hey, man, you probably shouldn't do that. You're going to lose your units. And you'd be like, yes, good point. And then, they would help you out in that scenario. But I think that's everything for the combat phase now. So hopefully I taught you at least something. And then there's the any battle shock phase. You can use this command ability at the start of the battle shock phase. That unit receives a command, does not have to take battle shock. So that's very nice, especially if you've got things like clan rats that have very low bravery, or even chameleon skinks, or even boars, right? Kind of low bravery, and you can say, hey, you know what? I use a command ability, they don't have to take battle shock, none of them flee. So that's another nice thing about that. And those are pretty much all the generic command abilities. And yeah, hopefully that covers command abilities enough for you to kind of understand it. I know it's still probably confusing, but yeah. Now let's talk about actually capturing a point. All right, I referenced it a little bit ago. Now that both turns are over, who would control this point? So the Orcs would control this point because they currently have more models on it than the opponent does, within 6 inches. Now, I'm trying to look this up so you can see a little bit better. Here we are. So there's a pretty good graph on it. They got the Stormcast Eternals control the objective. They count as having 12 models within 6 of the objective, because the Lord Celestin and the Star Drake counts as 5, and the Knight Arcanum counts as 2. So, if you have a monster, they count as 5 models on the point. So take it here. Unless noted otherwise, each monster counts as 5 for the purpose of contesting objectives. Each model with a wound characteristic of 5 or more that is not a monster counts as 2. and then everything else counts as 1. So let's say, all right, we bust out our Thanquol on Bone Ripper here. All right, for some reason, there's 3 people battling it out right now. Let's say this is what's happening, all right? So let's say they've had 1 die, and that's that. So this would be 4, so Seraphon have 4 on it. Thanquol is a monster, so he counts as 5. So technically the Skaven have more than the Seraphon right now. And then the Orcs would have 5 with the Boars, and then the big boss has 6 wounds, so he counts as 2. So technically the Orcs have 7 units on this point. So out of all this, the Orcs would control it because they have 7 units contesting the point. So that's how contesting points work. So monsters count as more than everything at 5. High wound heroes count as 2, and then all the other units count as 1 per unit, or per model in the unit. So, yeah. All right, one of the last things I want to bring up here is for army building, and that is battalions. So you have a choice of these core battalions in the rulebook. Any army can use these. So you have generals, or I guess it's down here. You've got your commanders, which are your leaders. You've got your sub-commanders, which are leaders with a wounds characteristic of less than 10. You've got your troops, unit that is not a leader, artillery, or behemoth. You've got your artillery, and you've got your behemoth that is not a leader. So just big monsters, essentially. But they can't be a leader. So like a hero character, essentially. And you can create these battalions. So one of the most popular ones is the Unified Battalion, which is 1-drop deployment. So if we look for the Unified thing right here, you'll see right here is what it is. And this allows you to put a leader, 2 sub-commanders, up to 5 troops. You need at least 2. When it's filled in like this, that means you need it. If it's gray, that means it's optional to include. And then you can also include a monster or an artillery piece. And that can all be placed in 1 drop at the start of the game. So that's a pretty popular one because, like we mentioned earlier, whoever finishes putting down their units first gets to choose who goes first. So obviously you want to be the one who chooses who goes first. So making a list where it's like, hey, I just dropped, half my army, or maybe more than half my army, or my entire army. I mean, if you have a leader, 2 sub-leaders, and like a bunch of troops, and like a trebuchet or a monster or something, like boom, you can drop your whole army in 1 drop, and you're like, hey, that's my army, right? You can also choose as many of these as you want, as long as you have, enough units to fill out the thing. Usually you can only pick about 2. On average. So maybe you pick the 1-drop, and then a lot of people also go for I think it's the Warlord Battalion, which is a leader, 2 sub-leaders, a troop, and then that's it, and whatever else you want to include. And that allows you to, what is it? Thing in the eye. So it allows you to, when you pick enhancements for your army, you can pick an extra enhancement. And it allows you to, once per battle, you can receive an all-out attack or all-out defense without spending a command point. So that's kind of nice as well. The big thing is picking an extra artifact. So that's going to be the last thing we learn about, is enhancements and artifacts and stuff like that. One other thing I want to mention about battalions is it used to be if you had a battalion in 2.0, those units all came down at once, kind of like this one we just mentioned. But now, if you pick this battalion or something, that does not come down all at once. You have to put that down 1 at a time. But if you want to use the all-out attack or all-out defense, then only these units can use that. And then, you can't be like, oh, I got my all-out attack, I'm going to use it on one of the guys from this. No, it has to be these units. So, yeah, it's, they're pretty simplistic. They've kind of made the battalions a lot easier than what they used to be, but they are adding in more and more battalions, I think, as new books come out, and I think they will be adding more. So these are the main ones you can do now, and I think there's a couple other ones out there, but yeah. So finally, we're going to learn about enhancements. So enhancements are something that just buffs certain units or your army, or, they're kind of as bonuses. So each set of allegiance abilities include a number of enhancements that are given to specific units in an army. Enhancements are divided into command trait, artifact power, spell lore, prayer scripture, mount traits, triumphs, and one or more set of unique enhancements. They're picked after you have chosen the battalions for your army. We just talked about that. You can always take one enhancement of each type for your army, and the battalions or battle pack you are using may allow you to track or take additional enhancements for your army. So, let's talk about that. So command traits are, well, there's multiple types of enhancements. So we've got command traits, we've got artifacts, we've got spell lore, we've got prayer scripture, and we've got triumphs. Triumphs, I never really play with triumphs, so I'm not even going to look at it. You can look into it if you want. So command traits are usually given to your general. Usually if you have leaders, you have to declare one as your general. That means they get to pick a command trait, they get to pick an artifact. If they're like a wizard, they get to pick a spell from your spell lore. So for example, these are just generic ones that anybody in the game can use. They've got all right here. So things like you can reroll run rolls and charge rolls for this general. So like, cool, if he fails a charge roll, he can reroll it. So things like that. Artifact, the bear has a ward of 5+. You can pick one of his melee weapons, add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made with that weapon. So just little things like that, depending on who your general is or your hero and like how you want to play them, and you can essentially kind of customize them a little bit. So if we go to the Seraphon Battletome I have here, you can see some examples. So we can take, let me go here. So these are all artifacts. So they've got artifacts that only Slan can take, artifacts that only Saurus can take, artifacts that only Skinks can take. So if you have a Skink general or a Saurus general, they have Slan spells, they have Skink spells. So like Lord Croak knows all of the Slan spells, so that's like a bonus to taking him. And then if we go, there's also command traits. Did I pass? Oh yes, here's command traits. So like you get a command trait, so you got all these. If you got a Slan, you can take those. Skinks can take these. But you can also choose, most armies have things like Thunder Lizard or Kotal's Claw. So these little subgroups of an army. So, for example, so let's say I choose the Thunder Lizard. I can't even talk. Let's say I go Thunder Lizard. This is a really common one in Age of Sigmar. So if I choose the Thunder Lizard as my sub-faction, I have to take these. These are the artifacts, command abilities, command traits that I have to take for my army. So let's read them. Add 2 to the wound characteristic of the Thunder Lizard monsters. So all your monsters in your Thunder Lizard, army, like if you took a bunch of Stegodons, they would have +2 to their wounds. That's nice. Command ability, you can use this command ability at the end of your shooting phase if you do pick a friendly Thunder Lizard battalion. Or Bastiladon, sorry. Or friendly Thunder Lizard Engine of the Gods, and they can pretty much shoot twice, or they can roll their engine twice. So that's a really powerful one. Command trait. So command trait is a general with a monster mount must have this command trait, and it adds 1 to the attack characteristics of weapons used by this general's mount. So that's another really good one. And then the artifact of power is an okay one. It's in your shooting phase, you roll a dice. On a 1, nothing happens. On a 2 to 3, nothing happens. Or on a 1, you can't even use this again for the rest of the battle. 2 to 3, nothing happens. 4 or 5, they take D3, and on a 6, they take D6. So this is like a type of sub-faction you can play. There's also these various other ones, but this one's really popular because people play big monsters, and then, yeah. But main point being, there's various types of command traits and artifacts and abilities, and you can choose to take one of these, like a sub-faction, and then you have to use these specific ones for your general or whatever you're doing, or you can just, kind of customize your own based on your book. Your book probably has a bunch for your army and different things. So like if you're taking a Slan general, like I said, you can take Slan artifacts and Slan command traits. Or if you're, you can also just choose some general ones if you want. There's actually pretty good ones. The most common one is the 5-up ward. So a lot of people will take that battalion I just showed you so that you get a bonus artifact, and then you can have someone that isn't your general, another hero character, have this 5+ ward on top of your general having all their bonuses. So it's just giving more heroes more bonuses, essentially. So it's a little complicated, I think, at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to understand. But it's definitely, it takes some time to get used to all this. 'Cause there's a lot to learn, right? Everything I just covered is a whole lot. There's also usually battle traits every army gets. So if I just do a quick look here for Seraphon, so battle traits. So pretty much these are things, if you look in your book and find the allegiance ability section, these are things your whole army gets just by being your army. So at the start of your hero phase, you can pick one of the following asterisms to be an ascendant until the next hero phase. So you can add one to attack characteristic of melee weapons, add one to run and charge rolls, or you can add one to casting and dispelling rolls. So every time your turn begins, you can choose one of these that your army gets. And that's just any Seraphon army. No matter what army you make, you get to pick one of these at the start of your turn because you're a Seraphon army. You can replace the spell you're slaying those. Obviously, Lord Croak knows them all, but if you just have one slaying, he can swap spells every turn. And you can also choose Starborn or Coalesced, which Coalesced, you get a whole bunch of buffs that are more of the less magical and more fighty and monstery, like taking less wounds and having more wounds, so just being tankier. And then if you go Starborn, you're a little more magical, you can summon in units, you can teleport, so it depends on how you want to play your army. And every army has this type of thing, where it gives you a lot of different options on how you want to build and play with your army. So a lot of the things I just mentioned are like customizing your army to how you want to play. There's obviously meta lists and crazy shit you can look up and do whatever you want. Or you can just have fun and play it the way you want and customize and do wacky stuff and all that. So hopefully you have learned something from watching this all over the place YouTube series. Again, if you missed my previous video covering the basics, you go back and watch that. But yeah, hopefully you learned a little bit more about Age of Sigmar. And yeah. Okay. See ya.